Hello everyone, I am Sean, one of the reporters, and before I start my report, I would like to read the quote that is in the PowerPoint. The quote is Culture is strategy for breakfast. Now, this basically means that no matter how well designed your strategic plan is, it will always fall flat unless your team shares the same appropriate culture. In the ethical decision making model, it primarily tackles the responsibility that comes along with making a decision. But it is not only limited to personal decisions. Now, in terms of firms or businesses, decision making can be fluid and flexible. As mentioned, it can be limited, influenced, shaped, and sometimes be affected by the corporate culture. In this chapter, we would like to focus more on the major issues regarding the factors seen in the corporate culture and how business leaders affect ethical behavior. So, corporate culture. Even though the majority of the companies today are decentralized, small and large companies still has a sense of corporate culture. But what is culture? Basically, it is a shared pattern of belief, expectation, and meanings that influences or guides the thinking of and actions of a particular group. Now, as seen in the figure, the relationship of the people and the culture is interdependent with each other. The people are responsible for shaping the culture and vice versa. Gert Hofstede came up with six basic human issues that society needs to come to terms with in order to organize itself. First one is the power distance index. It is primarily about the distance between individuals at a different level, most specifically if there's a hierarchy difference at play. An example would be a manager and a normal employee. Second is individualism versus collectivism. This is how people prefer to do their work either being alone or with a group. We often call them as introverts and extroverts. Third is the uncertainty avoidance. These are the people who are comfortable in being in a state of risk, uncertainty, and changes. Next is time and order orientation. Now, there are two types of long term orientation. First one is the high LTO, which are those who are comfortable with commitments, traditions, and rewards. Second is the short LTO, which those who are often changes rapidly. Next is the masculinity versus femininity. Low masculinity leads to a better workflow within a firm because it indicates greater equality and stronger relationship with each other. However, a high masculinity leads to competition and also suggests assertiveness. Lastly, is the indulgent versus restrained. It is basically the extent or how far a person will try to control their desires and indulges. Now, let's look at Hofstede's natural culture categories. Whenever a supporter says he validated his country's scores across over 400 measures and his results have been replicated many times, the critics will then say his divisions are based on generalizations and stereotypes. National cultures do not explain all differences, and his works focus in a single period of time and place. His perspective is biased by his Western views, and only a limited number of countries were included. Now, just as there are national cultures, businesses have also unspoken yet influential standards and expectations. If you join a firm with a culture that supports the values that you are uncomfortable with, there will be conflicts. Also, no culture is static. Culture changes, but modifying culture is a bit like of an iceberg. The iceberg is always moving, and if ignored, the iceberg will continue to float along the current. Also, strong leaders from within or at the top can have a significant impact on the culture.
This slide emphasizes the significance of corporate culture in an organization. It highlights that a strong culture can be a valuable asset, providing direction and stability during challenging periods. However, it also acknowledges that culture can become a hindrance, preventing the organization from responding creatively and promptly to challenges. The slide further mentions that corporate culture can be either top down or bottom up, indicating the different ways in which cultures are established. Defining organizational culture is challenging as it relies on employees' subjective perceptions. Perception can shape and reinforce culture in a circular manner. Culture can be understood by examining aspects such as work tempo, humor, problem-solving methods, the competitive environment, incentives, individual autonomy, and hierarchical structure. These factors provide insights into the prevailing culture within an organization. However, culture is complex and may involve additional dimensions. Despite having a list of cultural elements, it can still be difficult for individuals in a firm to identify the specific characteristics of their organizational culture. This is due to the complexity and interconnectedness of cultural elements, the implicit nature of culture, varying interpretation among individuals, potential lack of awareness or attention, and inconsistent implementation. Active observation, open communication, and reflection can help individuals gain a better understanding of their organization's culture. If you are lucky enough to be someone's employer, then you have a moral obligation to make sure people do look forward to coming to work in the morning. This quote from John Mackey, CEO and co-founder of Whole Foods Market, highlights the moral responsibility of employers to create a work environment where employees genuinely anticipate coming to work each morning. It emphasizes the importance of fostering a positive and engaging workplace culture that promotes employee well-being, satisfaction, and motivation. Ensuring that employees have a positive work experience contributes to their overall happiness and productivity.
Culture reflects the moral and ethical beliefs and standards that speak to how people should behave and interact with others. Corporate culture is important because it can support important business objectives. Employees, for example, might be attracted to companies whose cultures they identify with, which in turn can drive employee retention and new talent acquisition. The most widely recognized idea is that culture has a significant role in shaping an individual's ethical philosophy, which in turn influences that person's propensity to act morally. So, when deciding if a behavior is appropriate and acceptable, culture serves as a guideline. The effect of workplace culture on decision making cannot be overemphasized. There are only two sides to a coin when it comes to this situation, and that is true. A strong ethical culture can prevent stakeholder harm and increase bottom line sustainability if it is taken care of. If the culture is ignored, both long term and sustainability in financial success and staff retention could be destroyed. Business leaders are in charge of establishing and maintaining ethical corporate cultures. It is true that the culture of the organization you work for will play a huge role in shaping the person you become, as well as your views, morals, mindset, and values.
We have witnessed a fascinating shift with some firms embracing compliance-based cultures while others opt for the more progressive, integrity-based or values-based cultures. The compliance-based culture, often associated with the traditional approach, prioritizes strict adherence to rules as the primary ethical responsibility. In this model, employees are expected to strictly follow pre-defined regulations. However, it becomes evident that the compliance culture's strength lies solely in the effectiveness of its rules. When faced with situations where rules may not apply, the onus shifts to the personal integrity of the workforce. Contrastingly, the values-based culture focuses on reinforcing a set of principles and values rather than rigid rules. This approach encourages employees to align their action with the statement of values, fostering a deeper commitment to ethical behavior. By emphasizing personal integrity and aligning decisions with the organization's values, this culture seeks to go beyond mere legal compliance. In setting their ethical goals, compliance-oriented firms strive to meet legal and regulatory requirements, minimize the risk of litigations and indictment, and improve accountability mechanisms. However, organizations adopting a more evolved and inclusive ethics program have broader objectives. This includes maintaining brand reputation, attracting and retaining desirable employees, unifying global operations, fostering a better working environment, and ultimately doing what is right rather than simply doing things right.
I came to see, in my time at IBM, that culture isn't just one aspect of the game. It is the game. In the end, an organization is nothing more than the collective capacity of its people to create value. This quote from Louis Gerstner, former chairman and CEO of IBM, emphasizes the critical role of organizational culture in the success of a company. Gerstner states that culture is not merely one aspect of business, but is, in fact, the essence of the organization. He believes that the collective capacity of the employees to create value is what ultimately defines the organization. In other words, the culture of an organization directly impacts its ability to generate value and achieve its goals.
On a 2013 study, it is found that senior leaders are more likely than lower level employees to break the rules, and 60% of reported misconduct is attributed to managers. Stakeholders learn that immoral behavior is acceptable if leadership models it. Alternatively, stakeholders are inspired by a leader's example if they prioritize ethics over all other factors. The impact of ethical leadership is significant because their workplace as a whole is profoundly influenced by their leadership. They foster creativity and teamwork by cultivating a climate of respect and trust. Budgeting is all about value, is a long-standing management credo. Leaders should be perceived as people-oriented as well as engaging in visible ethical action. How do the effective leader and the ethical effective leader differ? Well, not every effective leader is an ethical leader, that's true. The process of developing, implementing, and achieving a vision is essential to effective leadership. The question of whether the vision or objective is morally beneficial to society as a whole is at the heart of ethical leadership. Ethical leadership focuses on the outcomes of leadership, whereas effective leadership focuses on the hows. Ethically appropriate methods of leadership are central to becoming an ethical leader. Before concluding that a leader is completely ethical, other socially responsible objectives may be required in addition to profitability.
It is important to note that the impact of a code of conduct or statement of values lies not only in enhancing reputation but also in providing guidance for internal decision-making processes. By integrating ethical consideration into day-to-day operations, organizations can create a built-in risk management system. A mission statement, developed through a participatory process, becomes the guiding force behind all decisions and actions within the company. Upholding the underlying mission as the ultimate dictate ensures decisions are aligned with the organization's principles. In conclusion, the emergence of different corporate culture highlights the evolving nature of ethical practices within the organizations. While compliance-based cultures emphasize rule adherence, values-based cultures focus on principles and personal integrity. By aligning decisions with the mission statement and fostering a culture of ethics, businesses can navigate the complexities of today's corporate landscape while striving to do what is right.
So hello everyone, for this slide we'll be tackling developing the mission and code. Critical to ask what the company stands for. Why does the firm exist? What are its purposes? Development of guiding principles through articulation of a clear vision. Identify clear steps as to how a cultural shift will occur between the stakeholders and the organizations. So for the next slide, to have an effective code that will impact culture, there must be a belief that this culture is possible and achievable. While business have codes of conduct, industries and/or professions might also publish codes of conduct. These codes of conduct apply to firms or people who do business in those arenas pala. So for the last that I'll be tackling about is ethics code guidelines. The Ethics Resource Center provides the following guidelines for writing an ethics code. Be clear about the objectives the code is intended to accomplish. Next, get support and ideas for the code from all levels of the organization. Be aware of the latest developments in the laws and regulations that affect your industry. Write as simply and clearly as possible. Avoid legal jargon and empty generalities. Respond to real-life questions and situations. provide resources for further information and guidance. In all its forms, make it user-friendly because ultimately a code fails if it is not used. That's all for me.
Culture has been a practical issue ubiquitously in a variety of circumstances in our lives, whether it is in school or work-related exercises. In this slide, I will be discussing cultural integration and other related topics regarding it. Organizations face the challenge of fostering unity and camaraderie among members with diverse cultures. Different approaches are employed to achieve this depending on the organization's culture and goals. Effective communication plays a crucial role in this process, encompassing enunciation, habits, and attitudes. Many companies utilize communication as a key strategy for achieving integration. Incentives are important for promoting effective integration and encouraging others to adopt and sustain ethical practices, particularly in communication. However, reporting observed transgressions internally or publicly can be challenging due to ethical considerations and concerns about personal safety and professional reputation. Avoiding accusations become crucial in maintaining a balance between reporting wrongdoing and protecting oneself. Whistleblowing refers to the act of reporting concerns or wrongdoing within a company or organization. There are two types: internal whistleblowing, where the issue is reported within the institution, and external whistleblowing, where authorities or external agency are informed. Whistleblowing can have negative consequences for the whistleblower, such as offensive remarks or threats. However, it is advisable for corporations and organizations to foster a whistleblowing culture, providing clear policies and training to ensure employees can report concerns directly. Whistleblowing can be seen differently by different people, with some considering it traitorous based on tone, word choice, and nonverbal cues. To address the concerns of whistleblowers, effective reporting within the internal sector should prioritize their protection and security. This can be achieved by ensuring their anonymousness, safeguarding the rights of the accused, and safeguarding their careers. These measures create a sense of personal and professional safety for whistleblowers, which can encourage others to come forward with their concerns within the organization. In order to investigate whistleblower accusations, many agencies and entities appoint an ombudsperson or ombudsman. The role of the ombudsperson is to determine the authenticity, truthfulness, or accuracy of the whistleblower's report. However, a challenge in the reporting system is the lack of clarity regarding what is considered acceptable or unacceptable within the company's culture. Reporting and the acceptance of whistleblower reports can vary depending on cultural norms within the organizations. Therefore, it is advisable to clearly and effectively define the company's culture to ensure smooth reporting processes. To ensure a successful reporting scheme when whistleblowers come forward, firms can follow 5 key methods. First, leaders should serve as role models by demonstrating the act of reporting wrongdoing and establishing a clear process for whistleblowers to raise their concerns. Second, leaders should explain the decision-making process behind their conclusions to prevent misunderstanding, offensive remarks, and chaos. Third, running drills or rehearsals for crisis management teams is valuable to enhance their capabilities in handling challenging events effectively. Fourth, allowing sufficient time for reflecting before making responsible decisions encourages considering the appropriate implications. And lastly, consistently and continuously communicating values and expectations to all stakeholders fosters a healthy relationship and camaraderie with the organizations, emphasizing organizational values and employee expectations in a clear and friendly yet authoritative manner.
Continuous monitoring and ethics audits are essential for uncovering hidden vulnerabilities that may present future challenges. An effective monitoring system can have various positive objectives, such as optimizing resource allocation, evaluating program alignment with organizational growth, accurately measuring and reporting positive results, ensuring fair compensation for ethical behavior, and promoting effective dissemination of ethical values from top management. By implementing these practices, organizations can proactively address potential risk and enhance their ethical standards. Identifying a toxic culture can be determined by observing the absence of organizational values and detecting warning signs in various aspects of the organization, especially when there are significant problems in managing finances and communication. Measuring the effectiveness of culture change involves in evaluating changes in employee perceptions, utilizing external audits and hotline data for information, and collecting and analyzing employee feedback to gain input on the culture. The United States Sentencing Commission regulates federal court sentencing policy through the Federal Sentencing Guidelines for Organization. These guidelines include 43 offense levels to assess the severity of the offense. The USSC aims to create a compliant and ethical corporate environment, categorizing offenders based on past misconduct. The court uses a sentencing grid to determine the appropriate guideline for range for the offender sentence. The USSC made updates to the guidelines in 2004, which include the addition of ethics and compliance programs. As a result of these updates, organizations were required to promote a culture that emphasizes ethical conduct and adherence to the law. They were also mandated to assess the areas of risk related to ethics and compliance and periodically evaluate the effectiveness of their programs. Furthermore, the criteria for an effective program were now specified in a separate and dedicated guideline. Effective leadership is essential for maintaining a robust control environment. This requires leaders to demonstrate commitment and take responsibility, setting the tone and establishing standards within the organization. Control activities, along with information and communication practices, encompasses various elements such as statements, policies, operating procedures, and effective training. It is crucial to consistently integrate these control activities into daily business practices. Regular review, assessment, and ongoing monitoring are necessary for accountability, including the monitoring of activities, conducting evaluation, and maintaining historical records. The USSC guidelines urge the corporation to create and maintain ethics and compliance programs that are effective in nature. It is highlighted that organizations must exercise proper diligence in preventing and detecting criminal conduct, while simultaneously nurturing an organizational culture that encourages ethical behavior and a commitment to legal compliance. The guidelines specify particular actions that organizations can take to demonstrate their due diligence in preventing criminal activities, as well as establishing the minimum requirements for an ethics and compliance program to be considered effective.
The USC sets requirements for organizations, including adopting standards and procedures, assigning responsibility to the board and executives, providing resources and authority, mandating board oversight, designating high-level personnel, implementing periodic reporting, barring individuals with misconduct from authority positions, emphasizing communication and training, establishing monitoring processes, enforcing incentives, disciplinary structures, and creating mechanisms for practices modifications.
The USC introduced a penalty reduction provision for compliance violation in 2010, provided that organizations satisfied four key conditions. Firstly, the individuals responsible for the compliance programs must have direct reporting obligations to governing authority. Secondly, the program should have internally detected the offense before it came to light externally. Thirdly, the organization must have promptly reported the offense to the appropriate governmental entities. Finally, none of the individuals accountable for the program should have endorsed or condoned the offense.